In this session, I'm going to be talking about considerations of the deliverer and how it relates to our teaching practice with transnational education, and specifically, what are the influences and the compliance. Now, if you go to the reading list, you'll see a really great article by Dunn and Wallace that it talks about the infusion approach. And you'll notice on the slide there that it says that there's the international perspectives in teaching methodology and curriculum, and Dunn and Wallace explore what are the international perspectives around that we need to take into consideration. But more importantly, that often we don't give attention to, is what are the intercultural issues around diversity, language and culture. And as we're going to unpack through at TNE courses, how does that then specifically impact on our practice and make it richer so the students are really engaging? Because it's often the interculturality, and we're going to be looking at that in more detail in our next film, that is ignored. And also we've got to think about what is the application of international standards and practices within a discipline. So as an example, Dunn and Wallace, actually on page 361 of that article, talk about the different range of learning styles and their preferred teaching and learning that encourages deep learning, which is similar to Australian domestic students. But we also then need to think about what is the epistemology of knowledge generation, and we'll look at that in more detail in our next film. That they come to. So whilst their learning approaches might have some similarities to Australian students, their expectation of who's going to generate all the knowledge may differ.
So you just heard Marg talking about one element of the theory, and periodically we're going to pause and ask you to reflect on what you've heard. So this first action point is to reflect on the infusion approach. In what ways will you include international perspectives in your teaching methodology and curriculum? Have a think about that. Bring some ideas to the first face-to-face workshop.
A really important part of our practice is compliance. And at the moment we've got the Australia's quality framework that RMIT University is complying with. And when we're designing and delivering our courses, this is a really important part, that we're aware of all the regulations. And again, in terms of the readings that we've provided for you, I draw your attention to Dos Santos' article that talks about the various legislations, the cultural and linguistic consequences of partnerships and other education arrangements. There's also quality assurance, not only of our study programs that we provide, and also the degrees that are awarded through our collective partnerships. So is the quality compliant with Australian standards, but then also the standards of the country that is hosting our studies. There's then also the recognition of the qualification awarded through our collaborative partnerships transnationally. And clearly the basic concern behind these considerations is protecting the consumer, who is the student primarily, but also then the host university and the country, the governance that the country has around education. So,
all right, you've heard Marg talking again about a piece of theory. Now your action is to go to the reference list for session 2 and select at least one of the readings there. Now, like any student, we're going to ask you to explore beyond what's talked about in the class and in the printed notes and the lectures. So find one, reflect on the key issues that are raised in that particular article, and bring those insights back to the first face-to-face workshop.